الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميعا. بإذن الله, tonight I'd like to speak about Muslims who are focusing on the nostalgia of the Salafi movement instead of building a future. This particular topic is a touchy topic, and for some viewers, it's going to be a very touchy or a special topic for them. The nostalgia of the Salafi movement in America or the Western world. The nostalgia. First, you have to look at some of the meanings or the meaning of the word nostalgia. This is like focusing on some of the things or an event or a story that has some significant meaning or impression in the person's life, right? For example, in modern day pop culture in America, there's a nostalgia when people see anything about Star Wars. There's a nostalgia that goes back to Empire Strike Back, Luke Skywalker, and Darth Vader in American culture. That is a nostalgia. Some people, when they see anything Star Wars now, this is what they think about. They remember this particular movie and the moment that people felt. Or nostalgia, for example, somebody see a clip of a popular movie or event like E.T., for example, right? E.T. is a popular movie in the 80s. And if somebody's seen the movie or some type of remedy or remnants of E.T., he's going to remember back in the 80s when he was a kid. And I'm really speaking about myself, right? They have flashbacks about when they was a child or their childhood. Now, when I say now the nostalgia of the Salafi movement, that you'll find many of the Muslims today from the Salafi movement, that when there's a nostalgia with them, that when they hear certain names of certain scholars or certain personalities, they get flashbacks of good memories that they had when the Salafi movement was very popular and there was a good brotherhood or sisterhood. And this is where people really develop their love for Islam, or people start developing the real brotherhood, right? So there's some flashbacks, some nostalgia. They think about some popular books, maybe by Sheikh Mukbil Rahimullah, maybe books or lectures they heard or that were translated about Sheikh Albani Rahimullah or some of his lectures. There's a nostalgia with that, right? There's some type of good feeling that he gets. A lot of platforms on social media, there's a lot of the Muslims who are focusing on the nostalgia of the Salafi movement from the 90s, but they're not building anything for their future. And there's not a problem with having reminding or sitting back and remembering the good times that we had as a Muslim and learning the religion and scholars or individuals we benefit from, right? But there is a cultural behavior with Muslims from the Western country that they are focusing too much of the nostalgia of the Salafi movement and not focusing on building Islam for the future, right? Or building for the future. You know, some of the nostalgia that some of the Muslims today will focus on related to the Salafi movement, like Sheikh Al-Halabi, Rahimullah, who just passed away not long ago, and many people could remember in America when QSS was popular and when a lot of the mashaykhs from Jordan, who are the students of Sheikh Nasruddin al-Albani, used to come to America and Canada and give lectures, right? Some of us, we focus on that particular nostalgia, some of the books that were translated then, and so on and so forth. And some of the Muslims today, they still have a lot of these articles with them, right? Right? Even if the article is a book or a lecture or a tape, I have some of my companions who were introduced to Dawah to Salafiyya back in the 90s, and today they still have these tapes, the tapes, right? The audio tapes. They still have these audio tapes, these cassette tapes. I know brothers who still have these things in their houses and they listen to them, right? MashaAllah, tabarak. I still have brothers who have CDs from certain personalities in the Salafi community, and they still have these CDs and these cassette tapes sitting in their house, MashaAllah, tabarak, and they benefit from them or they listen to them, right? But there has to be a realistic understanding that when we look back, or when we look at how these things came to us, how it made me feel, how it made us feel, how our development, or this feeling, or this nostalgia, how it makes me feel good, or have these flashbacks or these old feelings that I'm reminiscing about, and the feelings that it bring from me today shouldn't be what we only focus on. And it's very apparent that many Muslims, that this is what we focus on right now, is a nostalgia of the past, of the Salafi movement from back in the 90s. Some of us also go back to looking at the Salafi Dawah movement and how in the beginning there was the brotherhood, and how that brotherhood, or that good impression and feelings that we had at the beginning, how it was lost through following other certain personalities who destroyed that movement or caused division amongst the people in the Salafi community. All right. So some of us, we focus on that nostalgia. We're focusing on that feeling that how we had in the early 90s. Me, myself, I converted to Islam in 98. All right. And I came to Salafi Dawah maybe like 2001 or 2002 myself. So many of us today, I have some of my companions. I'm 42. I have some of my companions who are older than me, in their late 40s, in their 50s, some brothers in their 60s. And when I go to them, some of them still got the books, the cassette tapes, Some of them still got those old cassette tapes and stuff. I remember we used to listen to them and things like that, and different personalities that they used to listen to back in those days. But we gave up building. We gave up building 100% today. We're just focusing on the good times instead of looking at building and constructing. For example, I'm listening to some brothers talk about Sheikh Mukbil, rahimahullah, and some of the people, when Sheikh Mukbil was alive, some of the tulab that came out of Sheikh Mukbil's camp, right? They focusing on how it used to be back in the days, and how the impression or the feelings that the Muslim community had with these particular students, right? And there's nothing wrong with this type of reflecting or looking back at these things, but it's not an excuse not to build. And we are focusing more on nostalgia. And if we look at ourselves, especially us black African American or black indigenous Muslims who either reverted to Islam, converted to Islam, or our parents were converts to Islam and we were born Muslim, or we became Muslim during that era in time, that a lot of us, when we look at these things from that perspective, and we look at the scholars and those things that had good influence for us in that time, those scholars didn't do what they do for you to focus on nostalgia. Sheikh Mukbil rahimahullah didn't focus on building the manhaj and educating Muslims for nostalgia. He did these things to preserve the Islam for the future of the dawah. If we look at Sheikh Nasruddin al-Albani rahimahullah and his work and the things that he didn't do it for nostalgia. He did it so the religion could be preserved from the Muslims, for the Muslims could be preserved, that the Sunnah could be preserved, and it could exist, and the Muslims could benefit it in his time to the future. If we look at any of the works of the scholars or what they built or what they established, from institutes to universities to endowment, right? Waqf, anything that they built, they didn't do it for nostalgia. They did it for the future of Islam and to preserve the Sunnah and to preserve the religion of Islam. Nostalgia have its benefits, but it shouldn't be the main focal point of the Muslim community. And this is where the Salafi movement of today, where it's stuck at. It's stuck right there. You know, the Salafi Dawah in America is stuck right there, right? Maybe in the Muslim country, it is a different condition, right? But here in America, with the Salafi community in America, they're stuck on nostalgia. And they're not stuck on building for the future related to the Islam or their communities. You know, in a good 10 years, some of us who came from this background and came from this movement, and that we are reflecting on the nostalgia of this particular era, many of us, we'd be lucky if our children, right, be able to establish or continue to be Muslim, right? We be like in limbo. You know, lucky is not the best word to use, you know, but we'll be in a position where we able to save some of our kids. Some of us, we can't save our children. You know, we definitely can't save what's coming now, or what's happening now, or the fitna that's happening now, or the fitna that's coming. We won't be able to protect our children, our families, with nostalgia. Nostalgia is not going to protect the children with these things. All right? Nostalgia is not going to protect the future of our kids in Islam with nostalgia. You know? Having discussions for hours, which sheikh in the past was the best, which Salafi sheikh had the most students, which students were the best and gave the most dawah. That stuff is going to do nothing to preserve the Islam for the future. That's not going to preserve the religion. Preserving the religion is learning the deen and building upon it and benefiting those around you and building for the future. Not nostalgia, not storytelling or reminiscing about the past and the feelings and the good times that the brothers had back in the days. That's not going to help us with the future. You know, we need to stop living in the past. Meaning, you need to stop living with this nostalgia. You know, there is a big nostalgia with the Salafi movement from the 90s into 2000. There's a lot of nostalgia. There's a lot of good impressions a lot of brothers have and sisters have. But this is not how you build and plan for the future. You know, somebody with maturity, somebody with knowledge, somebody who knows about goals or meeting goals and meeting expectations, we're going to have to build for the future. Sooner or later, we're going to have to set aside, like, yo, we had a good time back in those days. It was real good. There was good things that happened. There were bad things that happened, you know, but we have to build for the future. We have even brothers now who focus on all the bad things that happened from those times. We have brothers who focus on the nostalgia of that time, the nostalgia of the Salafi movement from the 90s, and what took us away from those good feelings, or what broken up the group, or what directed the Muslims in that particular time to go to be diverted to something else that wasn't beneficial for them or the people in their community. There's no problem with speaking about these things, but we can't focus on them too much without building. There is no future without building. There's no future without building. Think about it. Nuh alayhi salam. Think about this. Imagine Nuh, who is from the Anbiya, who said when Allah commanded him to build a safina, the ark, the boat. Imagine if Noah didn't build it, but focused on how his peoples used to be before they were misguided. Imagine Noah, who was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to build the ark. Imagine he didn't spend the time building the ark, but he spent his time focusing on the times when his peoples were upon the truth. And he didn't build the ark. Imagine he didn't do anything but just focus amongst his family or amongst his followers how it used to be back before the people were misguided, how they used to feel, and didn't do his duty. Rather yet, what Nuh do? He built the ark. He did what Allah commanded him to do. He built. And because he built, when Allah sent the punishment, he was able to save himself, his followers, due to his obedience. So sooner or later, we're going to have to take a good look, reflect, smile, cry, be upset, but we're going to have to turn around and say to us, we must build. We must build. We must build. Sometimes, brothers, we get together, some of my companions, we get together and we talk about the good things, the lectures people used to go to, sheikhs we used to go to and visit, when what personality then that was popular and famous when he used to give talks, or when he used to give lectures, or when he used to do this, or when he used to that, and how the crowd used to be. Sometimes we reminisce and we talk about these things, mashallah tabarak. But these type of stories is not where the dawah ends. It's not where the dawah ends. Meaning that, hey, there need to be some constructive activities building. I want to end with this. Some of us Muslims, in particular with the Salafi Dawah movement in North America, which is different from in the Muslim country, because in the Muslim country, I see the Muslims, in particular the Salafi community in the Muslim countries, building, whether it's schools, building, whether it's universities, building, whether it's business, building, whether it's radio stations, building. I see them building hospitals, clinics, building, economics, building. But here in America, in the Salafi community, I see a lot of people just focusing on nostalgia of the Salafi movement from the 90s. If we don't build, there's no future. If we don't build a constructive institute for learning religion, there's going to be no future. And while we're focused on these things, and while we're on this particular topic, it goes back to, even if we look at the Salafi movement from American view inside of the United States, then we have to say how many scholars that we got that came out of that movement. How many Islamic institutions of learnings that we got from that movement that produced scholars? Very few. 2, 3 brothers, 4 brothers, 5, maybe 10, maybe 15. How many people, how many scholars and students of knowledge that we built? Then we got to ask, how many people we lost today? How many people we lost today because we didn't focus on knowledge or knowledge-based information from Quran and Sunnah and building institutions? That's real talk. We should be able even today, if we're going to have nostalgia, we're going to focus on the nostalgia of Salafi movement in America. Then we're going to have to focus on also, okay, where we need to go for the future. How the Muslim community is going to be in the future. How is the Salafi community going to be in the future? Because a lot of these communities that have a history in America related to the Salafi Dawah, some of them are not doing good. Some of them in the community, the peoples are not doing good. Some of them in the community, the people's not very much informed about what is Islam or Quran and Sunnah, or really what is the Salafi minhaj to this day. Some of them think Salafi is just from whatever scholar in Saudi they follow, in the Saudi government. Is Salafi Dawah. So we have Muslims today in our community who believe this. Salafiyya is what Saudi is. Rather yet, Salafiyya is not related to any particular scholar or government. We in 2020. For some of the brothers in the Salafi community, man, it's been like 30 years for some brothers, or 35 years some brothers. And what have the people in the Salafi community, what level have we gone to as a people in the community? I'm not talking about individuals, but as a group of peoples in this country, what have we established related to the dawah? What have we established? Nothing. No schools, no universities, no finance institutions, no hospitals, no clinics, no scholars. We haven't produced any scholars. Can't tell me one scholar that we produced here. None. No scholars. Everybody who's from the Salafi Dawah, who's have maybe his bachelor's or master's today, he got that degree in the Muslim country. He didn't get that degree in America. He got that degree in a Muslim country, meaning that he was educated. Came from Saudi Arabia. That means that he was educated through the Muslims in Saudi and the government and the scholars there who are thinking about the future of Islam. That's why they was allowed to come to the country, so they could be taught Islam to preserve it. What are we doing in the Salafi community in America? What we are producing. We boast, we look at the nostalgia of the Salafi Dawah, but what have we actually produced right now in 2020? Nothing. We haven't produced anything. Except for Muslims or a group of peoples in our community who are still ignorant about Islam, who are still ignorant about the Sharia of Allah, who still don't know Quran, who still not memorizing Quran, who still don't know Arabic language, who still don't know Aqidah, who still don't know Tawheed. We haven't built anything. We haven't established anything. And for us to be focused on the nostalgia of the Salafi movement and the feelings, it's like when I look at it and I hear these stories, it makes me want to throw up. Because we are focusing on how the feeling of Salafi movement in the past, but we haven't produced anything. And those few in the community who have Islamic scholarship, they didn't get the scholarship in America. They didn't get that education of the religion in America. They was educated in a Muslim country who government and scholars who are building for the future of Islam, and why they allow them to come in their country to be educated, because they understand the importance of educating is related to building a good future related to the deen. And I will end with that. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa shallam wa atubu ilayk.